Yes, my name is Christopher Janney, and I want to say how happy I am to be here. I'm from Boston, Massachusetts. It is currently, 92 degrees here. Just so you know, it's usually about 2 degrees in Boston this time of year, so I was very much looking forward to coming here for a week. Turns out it's 64 degrees in Boston, so that all didn't sort of work out. But I do hail from Boston. I'm trained as an architect and a jazz musician. And as he mentioned, sometimes I try to make music more like architecture, and sometimes I try to make architecture more like music. And today I want to talk a little bit about, let's see if this works. Go, stop. Okay, think big, act small. My company, Phenomen Arts Incorporated, we're a group of architects and musicians who make, whoops, no. What's going on here? Can't be automatic, guys. I'll never keep up. Okay, here we go. We're going to talk about urban alienation first. The idea that cities are so big and so dense that people can't find a way to really interact with one another. Stop it. There we go. Okay, very good. And so I developed this idea we should have what's called a social foil. We need to develop instruments or structures that encourage people to interact with one another in public spaces. And it's what I call my urban musical instruments. Let's try. Here we go. So, because I do a lot of work with interactive light and sound, and it's very hard to take a picture of sound, I'm going to play you just a little video clip from a CBS Sunday morning interview, which hopefully will give you a more concise and quick introduction to the work than I could.
An ear for art is what musicians have. But the artist that Martha Teichner is about to take us to meet is not a musician. Then again, perhaps he is. Come to think of it, no, he isn't.
I'm glad he wasn't one of the judges.
For yourself.
Down the path from his home in Lexington, Massachusetts, in a converted greenhouse, he creates urban musical instruments for the public to play.
What's that?
Well, this is actually a simulation of the piece that's in the New York City subway. And in fact, what happens in the subway, if no one plays the instrument for 5 minutes, it plays itself for 5 seconds.
Not only does the installation at 34th Street and 6th Avenue play itself, what it plays depends on the people playing it.
I want it to be a part of your everyday life. On your way to work, you have some kind of aesthetic experience. People don't tend to look right at each other. People are just minding their own business, and they're waiting for the train. So right there, you've got a stage, you've got a possibility. And what I find most intriguing is when complete strangers are all of a sudden playing this thing together. They're looking at each other, they're smiling, they're laughing. My interest is that it transforms an urban space and puts a little relaxation into an otherwise tense environment.
For Janney, understanding the physical nature of sound goes back to playing the drums. For him, striking beams of light to make sound is the same thing. He took time off from college to tour with jazz groups. Everything about his art is about the spontaneity of jazz.
I think that color, I think that you can hear color. I think that you can see sound. These are not things that the engineer or, that we should all agree are reality. But I think in the artist world, this is all quite possible.
What Chris Janney creates is public art, but for him that does not mean a statue in a park. It means people interacting with technology to transform a place into a moment, a form into a feeling.
Okay, hopefully that gives you a concise introduction. And I do want to say how happy I am to have a live band open for me. As an architect and a musician, I haven't had a live band behind me in quite a while, so it's a special treat. Okay, here we go. So actually, the first urban musical instrument I ever created in the late 70s, while I was at MIT, I'm here on the Spanish Steps in Rome, Italy. We just did a very small version of it. We had it up all this past week at UTCC at the university. The same old idea of like how to transform an existing piece of architecture, in this case an existing stairway, into a musical staircase, a sound staircase, something that is interactive for the public to interact with, and also do things possibly with dancers or musicians, things of this nature. I try to think of ways to bring music into the public environment and to bring that sense of emotion that you can get through music into the public space. This particular piece is indicative of a lot of the work that I do in major airports. This is actually a 7-story atrium in an airport at Logan Airport in Boston, Massachusetts. You can see I transformed the facade to a big colored glass, so it makes a lot of colored shadow inside the building. And then also there's a multi-speaker sound environment in the building. So we're going to show a little clip because I'd love you to hear how it works.
If you've queued up for a boarding pass, lumbered from escalator to concourse with a burden of luggage, you've done the Logan Shuffle. That's big airports the world over. And Thanksgiving week, give thanks if you don't have to be there. But I recently blundered into a nook in the Logan Terminal C pedestrian tower called Rainbow Cove, where light creeps in through rainbow glass, and as you pay for your parking,
please insert credit card below,
and wait for an elevator, the Hockomock Swamp surrounds you. Chirping, croaking, the cooing of a loon.
I come here all the time on business, and it's warming, it's nice. That's New England.
It's sound environments of New England, to be exact. Along with the colorful windows, it's a dreamscape of Lexington, Mass. Artist Christopher Janney, who's created colorful, restful public spaces around the globe. For some Logan travelers, Rainbow Cove is a tranquilizer. What do you think of that?
It's very nice.
You like that?
Yeah, it's very relaxing.
I think it's very soothing, since I'm a freight flyer. It's different. Doesn't sound like Boston.
Thank God for that. And once on the elevator, nature follows you, piped in on a speaker.
Like anything that makes people feel in a less stressful environment is only a positive move.
For me, the short trip to garage level 3 was a trip across the river and into the trees. Got a fix
Not everybody in Boston is
boobies.
like this, okay? I just
It's
want to
refreshing
say.
versus just hearing the opening and closing of the elevator and the coming down.
Let's see if I can bag this big walleye. Pete's looking for your car in the Logan garage. Talk about lost in the woods.
I mean, whatever, you can make the airport a little nicer, right?
Right, and it was back to Rainbow Cove for me. And that's what's topping my list this week. I'm Greg Whalen.
Okay, so there's a good example of trying to combine, put sound into architecture to try to give the architecture a more sense of warmth, but also the way that the sound, or the sound score in this case, I compose all these kinds of environments to be indigenous to where they live. So in Boston, I would do sound environments of the environments that are indigenous to that area. If I'm in Miami, or actually there's a piece in mine in Zaragoza, Spain. So the whole idea is you can use sound to actually help locate a person's sense, especially airports when they're just coming into the country or going out, give you a sense of where you are in the world. Okay, this one was a commission to do the entire facade of this 7-story parking deck for a bank in Charlotte, North Carolina. Now the interesting thing was that not only doing all the visual elements to it, I also had a series of places where you could literally touch the building as you walk around the building and trigger sound and light. This idea of, can I have a way that people can actually play with the architecture? And part of that is a way to sort of give them a sense of ownership to the architecture, to the building, and also part to this community. Here's a little clip. Now.
Ancient buildings use statues to tell a story. This one at Brevard and 7th uses rhyme. The fish smells fine. To crack the code, you have to solve the riddle. Press the red panels in the right order and watch what happens.
If you do solve it, all the lights go off simultaneously and the different sounds chime. So you should know when you solve the riddle.
So what is this landmark? It's a parking deck, known as the 7th Street Station. Bank of America and the Arts and Science Council collaborated on the Uptown Musical Garage. It's already making a difference.
We decided to come this way so that we could check out the wall. We were hoping that it wasn't crowded and we could figure out the pattern and play with it.
I had to pay them a lot of money to say that, so they got it pretty right, though. Okay, this one actually is in Cincinnati, Ohio. That's the home of the Delta Queen Corporation. It's the company that built most of the paddle boats that went up and down the Mississippi. And they wanted to create a memorial to the national steamboat, to the steamboat era. So there was a competition to make a sculpture or an installation that is the National Steamboat Monument. I had done work with steam, actually, as a medium together with light and sound, and so it seemed very natural to me. Fortunately, I was the only one who proposed real steam, so that sort of put me above the group, and I won the competition. But it is that idea of steam as a beautiful visual element, especially the colder it gets, the denser the steam gets. So there's a lot of interesting visual aspects that go on, adding a sort of ephemeral quality like that. Here's a little video that gives you the rundown. Oh, I'm going to tell you a little bit about this. Okay, so every 4 years in this city, they also have what's called the Tall Stacks Festival, where they have an annual festival and steamboats come from all over and celebrate the history of the steamboat era. But the nice thing is that I built the steam fountain so that it could be played with an electronic flute. The very good member of the band here who was playing the flute during the break, it's a flute like that. It's called an EWI, electronic wind instrument. But I hooked it up to the computer that runs the whole installation and had a sax player playing the whole fountain together with members of the Cincinnati Pops brass section. And you can see this is a page from the score. Yes, I write my scores in AutoCAD in the architecture language so that I can write not only the notation but how I want the various musicians to walk around, and then also the various aspects of what I want the computer to play.
You're watching WLWT-TV, Channel 5, Cincinnati. From the home of Sky 5, this is Eyewitness News 5 at noon.
A new monument of Cincinnati's riverfront is paying tribute to the area's rich heritage of steamboats. This morning, the National Steamboat Monument was officially dedicated. Look at that. The Steamboat Monument has a host of interactive activities. Greg McKinney joins us live with more on this unique addition to the riverfront. Greg, a monument that's hard to miss.
It really is. It's absolutely beautiful, and it's right next to the Great American Ballpark. It really is something to see, and if you're wondering where we're standing, we're right here in the middle of this massive monument, really, and it's called the Whistle Grove, where we're standing here at the moment. And if you wonder why they call it the Whistle Grove, take a look and listen.
This is actually from the performance.
Isn't that something? That was the scene earlier this morning at the official dedication of the National Steamboat Monument. A brass band performed alongside the steam columns and worked interactively with them. There are sensors that make these columns blow off steam when you walk by them, so this was choreographed beautifully. And there's a plaque right underneath the paddle wheel that contains a riddle based on steamboat history. Figure out that riddle and you'll be provided with directions for walking around inside the Whistle Grove to set off a special calliope and a steam performance.
Yes, well, I did use another riddle again, and I've used riddles ever since because it's a great way, especially in a permanent installation, for people come back. They don't always get it solved the first time, of course, and then they get it solved and they bring a friend or they have a special distant cousin coming to town, oh, let me go show you this and let me show you what I can do. So the riddle turns out to be a great idea for creating these kinds of permanent interactive light and sound installations. The last one, Sonic Forest. This piece was actually originally developed on a National Endowment for the Arts grant where I wanted to explore ways to bring a human scale back to large public modernist plazas. Because I felt like, they're so big you feel like a little ant walking across. So how can we bring a human scale back to it? So based on my same ideas of interactive light and sound environments, I developed a series of columns, these 16 columns, that could be set up on any plaza, and people basically can walk in amongst them. Up to 100 people can play this at once, which as a communal musical instrument was very much what intrigued me. Here's a little clip. Sonic Forest was originally designed in 1995 on a National Endowment grant. The concept was to explore ways of bringing life and human scale to large urban plazas. We toured a number of city festivals, including the Three Rivers Arts Festival in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Then in 2005, the Bonnaroo Music Festival asked me to propose a project for their environment. With 50,000 people in a 3-day period, I realized this was in fact a temporary city centered around music. So I proposed a variation of the original Sonic Forest. Since that time, we have been touring the work in various forms, refining the concept with each installation. Hey, stopped sort of my thought. Last piece, last slide. Being at the UTCC for the last week, doing sound stare and walking around and exploring the IDE Center, I came upon this quote. And I thought, this is probably one of the most important quotes an entrepreneur or an inventor will ever understand. It's not just about making the piece, although that's a pretty big part, but the even bigger part is how do you bring it into the world. And all the, as you've heard from other speakers today, all the process of failure, finally bringing you to a way to bring something into the world. That's something I've experienced certainly with the urban musical instruments, and it's an invaluable piece of information. Thank you very much.